So we have learned about the quadratic graph where the power of x is square, as well as cubic graph where the power of x is 3. In this video, you will learn about graph where the power of x is a negative number, as well as when x is the power of the function. So please copy down the objective. You will learn about the shape and how to draw the curve with negative power and when x is the power. But the idea here is the same for these two type of graph, which is you need to plot the coordinate first, then you draw the graph. Basically, the idea of this type of graph is the same as your quadratic graph as well as cubic graph. They will give you a set of coordinates, ask you to calculate one of the y value. Then from the table, you go and plot your graph. The shape, it is good to know, but to be honest, they are ever changing. So just a rough idea will do. So now let us take a look at some example whereby the power of x is negative. For example, these two functions, y is equals to a over x and y is equals to x plus ax. So now you might ask, where is the negative power? You see, y is equals to a and x to the power of negative 1. And same thing down here, it is x plus a to the power of negative 1. So when we have a negative power 1, when a is a positive number, a is positive, my graph will look something like this. It is as though there are two lines that is going to the up direction. A is positive. If a is negative, then my graph will look something like this, as though the line is going down from left to right. Left is on top, right is below, so it is like going down. So this is the general shape of the graph. But most of the time when you have this type of question, for example in this case, is either they ask you to draw when x is bigger than 0 or when x is smaller than 0. So you will only be drawing one side of the axis or the y-axis. So you will either only have this or you only have this. In the case of negative a, it is the same. They will either ask you to draw this side or ask you to draw this side. So you will get only one of this curve down here. So most likely that is what they will ask you to draw. Another example whereby the power of x is negative is y is equals to a divided by x squared. So this, I think by now you should have recapped that this is equals to this function. So the power of x is negative 2. So in this case, when a is a positive number, your graph will look something like this. So instead of it being here, your graph will have two curves that is on top of the x-axis. And when a is negative, then you will have two curves below the x-axis. You just have to have a rough memory of how this curve looks like. And it will help you in some of the questions. But like I said, they like to ask you to draw only one of the side of the y-axis. But just bear in mind this kind of shape. Lastly, let us look at function whereby x is the power. For example, this function y is equals to 2x, or y is equals to -5 times 3 to the power of x. This kind of graph, we call it the exponential graph. And they generally follow this format. Y is equals to k a to the power of x. When k is positive, basically k and a, they are constant. So k over here is positive. So in this case, k is equals to 1. That's why there's nothing. Your graph will look something like this. And when k is negative, like the case of -5, your graph will look something like this. So just have a rough image of how they look. If you ask me whether this is important, I would say not really very important, because at the end of the day, for this kind of weird function whereby x is the power, or when the power of x is negative, they will just ask you to draw one of the side, and if they throw in some more terms, for example, like 2x plus 2 over x or something along this line, the graph will be very different. So not really important that you know all the shape, just know how to do, which is very simple, and the same for all. Work out the coordinate, plot the graph, then join the coordinate together with your smooth curve. So let us take a look at this example. Find the value of y when x is equals to 4. Please remember to do this yourself. Pause the video and substitute 4 into x and find the y value when 4 is equals to x. Then later on, plot the graph. So pause the video and plot it yourself. And if you need a reference, it is something like this. And your graph should look something like this. Because this is only the right hand side of the y-axis. The left hand side, there's something, but the question, most likely, they wouldn't ask you to draw. So let us answer some question. So use the graph to find the minimum value of y, which is down here. So please take note. It is around here. It is not 2. It is somewhere between, I think, 1.5 and 2. The value of x when y is equal to 3. So you have to draw a line where y is equal to 3 and find the x value. Draw a tangent. Find the gradient of the graph when x is equal to 2. So again, use a ruler, place it against the graph when x is equals to 2 and draw the tangent. Then pick 2 coordinates. Like this, like this, like this, like this. Then do your dy over dx. Alright? And if you need a reference, here are the answers. Now let us take a look at question 2. Y is equals to x squared over 4 plus 6 over x. So same thing, they will ask you to find the y value, then plot the graph. So pause the video, do this yourself. And if you need to check the answer, it is down here. And your graph will look something like this. So this might look very different from the generic graph that I showed you earlier. But just keep in mind that most of these questions, they will only ask you to draw one side. So it will look something like this. And some question that you need to know how to answer. First is to find the tangent. Then solve the equation. And for part E, if you have forgotten, you are supposed to draw the box. Oops. X, Y, pick 3 value, and substitute X to find the value of Y. This one I can tell you. The rest, go and find out yourself and draw this diagonal line that is going up. And find the X value where they intersect. And if you need a reference of the answer, they are down here. Moving on, when X is the power. So the idea is the same. Find this value, then go and plot your graph. So do pause the video to solve for Y. But for part B, I would suggest you don't pause the video. I think take a look at how I draw the x-axis will be good to save you time. So how I draw the x-axis is like this. Instead of normally using this kind of thick line or this kind of thick line, I'm using the 5 line rather than the 10 line. Why I'm doing so is because the value of y, the highest, is 5.7, then it's until here. So sometimes you can do this to stretch out your graph so that they fit into the scale. So anyway, just do B, since now you have saw how you can plot the x-axis, and if you need the answer, it is down here. And some of the questions that they might ask are as follow. So do answer this yourself. Find the value of x when y is equals to 5. Then draw the tangent thing. Okay, if you need the answer, they are down here. Please check. Last question. Given that y is equals to 3 to the power of x, complete the table below. So you are supposed to find the value of y that is down here and y that is down here. Then 2 cm 1 unit on the y-axis, then 4 cm 1 unit on the x-axis. Draw the graph below or on the graph paper. So pause this video, do it yourself, and if you are ready to move on, this should be roughly how your graph should look like, and your curve should be down here. Then use your graph to solve the following, and if you need the answer, they are down here. And this will be all for this video.